Thank you, Ria, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of AIA Virginia, thank you for joining us for the 2021 Virginia Prize panel discussion. My name is Sean Riley, and I have the distinct honor and privilege of serving as AIA Virginia's 2021 president. One of the 6 pillars of AIA Virginia's strategic plan is to invest in future generations of architects and develop visionary leaders for service. The Virginia Prize competition is one of the ways we do that. The Virginia Prize competition is a design charrette that engages students at all of the accredited schools of architecture in Virginia. The competition is intended to promote collaboration and strengthen bridges between the profession, students, and professors. I would like to express our gratitude and thanks to the Virginia Prize Planning Committee for all of your hard work to make this year's competition happen. Participation in a design competition is a rigorous and demanding experience. To submit a competition entry is hard work, intellectually, emotionally, and physically. And because of that, I would especially like to congratulate and commend each of you that participated in this year's competition. You have all learned and grown as persons and as aspiring architects through the intensity of the competition experience. I hope that this experience increases your confidence and inner strength as you continue your journey into the profession that we all love. And I hope all of you enjoy today's panel discussion. With that, I will turn things over to my friend and one of AIA Virginia's past presidents, Rob Reese.
Well, thank you, Sean. As you just mentioned, you hope that this competition gives these students confidence. It sure gives me confidence that we've got a lot of talent developing right now in the schools, and I'm pretty excited about that. The first thing I'd like to do is introduce our jury. We have really a remarkable jury that we put together, and we've had a great time looking at your work and working through it. The first person is Audrey Davis. She is director of the Alexandria Black History Museum in Alexandria. And she's past president of the Virginia Association of Museums and is one of the founders and director of Virginia Africana Associates, the network of museum history and preservation professionals. Audrey is currently vice president of the Alexandria Historical Society, a member for Living Legends of Alexandria, the National Women's History Museum, and a former board member of Preservation Virginia. In 2016, the Washington Business Journal listed Audrey as #2 on their top 100 list of Washington power players. Audrey is one of the co-chairs of Alexandria's Community Remembrance Project. In February 2021, she was profiled in the Alexandria Times. She's a former gubernatorial appointee to the Board of Directors for Virginia Humanities. In 2018, she was appointed by Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe, the task force for the identification of the history of formerly enslaved African Americans in Virginia, on which she still serves. In 2018, she was reappointed by Virginia Governor Ralph Northam to the State Historical Records Advisory Board for a term of 3 years. It's her 5th gubernatorial appointment. Audrey is featured in the WETA documentaries Discovering Alexandria Parts 1 and 2 and Martyrs, Mayhem, and Martial Law, Life in Civil War Alexandria. She was an on-set historical consultant for the PBS drama Mercy Street, which premiered nationally in January 2016 and ran for 2 seasons. She is also featured in the 2020 documentary Our Alexandria by filmmaker Robin Hamilton, which looks at Alexandria's civil rights through the lens of 2 local African-American dollhouse creators. Whew, it's a lot. She's accomplished, and we were privileged to have her join us. Next is Chris Lee, sometimes goes by Frank Chris Lee. Maybe he can tell us about that, but I know him as Chris Lee, AIA. He's president of Johnson Lee in Chicago. He was educated at the University of Chicago, got his B.Arch there, and then studied at the Harvard Graduate School of Design and got his master's in urban design. He did a semester exchange program at Hampton University. So Chris has a number of ties to Virginia. He worked for Helmut Jahn for 4 years. He was visiting professor at Virginia Tech for a year, and he's lectured at UVA and the WAC, W-A-A-C. 37 years ago, he founded Johnson & Lee, an award-winning firm focusing on underserved communities in Chicago. Chris is a fellow in the AIA, and he just wrapped up a 10-year stint on the Harvard Graduate School Design Alumni Council. He's happy to report that 7 students from Virginia Tech were admitted to the Harvard Graduate School of Design. Congratulations. Chris and I met 29 years ago, which is a little shocking. I think Chris had hair then, but while we were both working on the Chicago Memorial Hospital project in downtown Chicago. Next is Brad Grant. Brad is a professor of architecture at the College of Engineering and Architecture at Howard University in DC. He's been in leadership roles at Hampton and Howard University's chairperson, director, associate dean, and interim dean. He's served as past president of the Association of Collegiate Schools of Architecture and the Center for Contemplative Mind in Society. He's currently president of the board of the Healthy Building Network and is the co-founder of the Directory of African American Architects, the first comprehensive survey, analysis, and report on the numbers and roles of African American architects. He's appointed as this is a really cool part, he's appointed as the inaugural Instagram Artist in Residence at the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery. If we have time afterwards, maybe he can tell us more about that. Next is, I should have people wave too, sorry about that. Sequoia, will you wave? Sequoia Hunter Cuget, design advocate and with Determined by Design. Sequoia is a design chameleon. She has the ability to tap into the heart of a community and give people a voice through design. With her diverse art and culturally rich background, as well as her multidisciplinary design experience, she's a versatile person who can help partners address any project challenge. Sequoia has a Bachelor of Art in Liberal Arts from Sarah Lawrence College, where she studied studio art, literature, and anthropology, as well as a Master of Fine Arts in Interior Design from Moore College of Art and Design. Boutique Magazine recognized her as a 2020 Boutique 18, a rising star in hospitality design. And next, almost finally, is Ashley Montgomery, Associate AIA. Ashley, would you wave? There she is. And she is the leader of the Hanbury Resiliency Initiative and works with me at Hanbury. She's a designer whose focus revolves around the intersection of the community and environmental health. She believes that design should reflect the integrated society we live in and should respect the concerns of the environment. Her passion for holistic, community-based design has led to participation in creating the Sustainable Community Design Leaders, a peer network organized by Green Building, or Building Green, focused on creating sustainable and resilient communities, in addition to serving as chair for the Community Outreach Subcommittee for the Virginia Coastal Resiliency Master Plan. As a graduate of Hampton University, she's really familiar with the Virginia Prize process, and she knows how daunting and exciting and tedious the competition task can be, given the framework and the mountain of work that students already have as they're entering this. This year's added layer of depth to the process, the trauma and tragedy of the lives taken by racism and white supremacy, added to an already encumbered competition. She's grateful to those who shared their ideas and designs with us, and she would like to thank them for their time, as all of us would. Thank you, Ashley. And me, I'm Rob Reese. I'm from Minnesota originally. I went to Iowa State for undergraduate school and the Harvard GSD for graduate school. I've been with Hanbury and Norfolk for over 16 years. I'm a design principal and design director, and I'm surrounded by amazing talent and opportunities, amazing talent just like Ashley. Beyond my project work, which is honestly what gets me most excited, my responsibility is to support our talent, provide insight, resources, and strategies to position everyone in the firm to do the best design work that they're capable of. And like Chris, I too have recently finished a stint of sorts. Sean alluded to this. I was with the AIA board for around 8 years. And in order to get rid of me, they made me president in 2019. And I have had the pleasure of working with Ria for that entire time. She's amazingly talented, and it's Ria who has orchestrated what we're doing today, the work of the committee and the competition, and she's really why we're all here to talk about this. So hopefully that is as much as anyone would want to know about all of us. Let's see. Okay, next I will describe the jury process. We used a platform called it's Mural, and it's their whiteboard. And so over the course of 2 multi-hour sessions that were longer than we scheduled, we thoroughly examined each entry. We then ranked them, and then we deliberated a lot. And for the most part, found consensus regarding the projects that you'll see recognized today. For those that might be on the call that aren't familiar with the challenge, what happens is on a Friday at 5 p.m. in January, the students were given this design challenge, and they had over the weekend until 9 a.m. on Monday morning to design a pillar installation for the city of Alexandria's Market Square. They were provided background info, a site plan, and some photos. I think Susan Piedmont-Palladino will next provide an overview. Susan?
Thank you. Yeah, so this was our turn. As those of you know about this competition, the task of writing the brief rotates among the schools, Hampton University, University of Virginia, and Virginia Tech's 2 campuses. So I direct the Washington Alexandria Architecture Center, otherwise known as the WAC. And it was our turn to write the brief. And what a year to have that challenge. It was a year of public health catastrophe, heartbreaking racial injustice, political upheaval. And so it was a challenge for us. The idea for this year's competition, as timely as it was, actually goes back quite a few years in terms of our thinking at the WAC. Located in Old Town Alexandria, for years we would walk past a statue at the corner of Prince Street and South Washington Street, a statue of a Confederate soldier known as Appomattox. And in 2017, we had an internal competition among our students to raise the question of what should be done with him and works like that. And that seems like an eternity ago, 2017. And at the time, while there was some brilliant and poetic and moving solutions, it seemed as if nothing would ever change because commemorative works, even to illegitimate causes, embody a lot of inertia. But things have started to change and continue to change. And for this competition, we remembered that, and we were also inspired by the City of Alexandria's Community Remembrance Project, which is part of the Equal Justice Initiative's Community Remembrance Project and the National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Birmingham. So here's another intersecting thread. This, of course, was designed by Mass Design Group, and the memorial illuminates the nation's history of racial lynchings, represented by 800 Corten steel pillars. I was the consulting curator for the exhibition that's up at the National Building Museum right now of Mass Design Group's work, and you can go see a documentation of that amazing project. So the city of Alexandria, with 2 documented lynchings, has begun its own citywide effort to understand and reckon with that history. But to talk about the competition ever so briefly before I turn it over to Audrey Davis, design competitions are inherently problematic. Even when they're academic exercises, they can be exploitive of designers and dismissive of community input. But in a competition such as this one, it isn't intended to provide a definitive answer. And the beauty and seriousness of the students' proposals notwithstanding, no answer can be provided to this question without community voices. This is not the place for this kind of solution. Instead, the goal for this, for the students, was to prompt questions. Who am I to make this proposal? Who am I to offer a suggestion? Shouldn't this be a community decision? How can a weekend charrette do this justice? And these were questions that came back to us from our students. But really, this prompt reminds us that architects always design in the name of another. And so it's part of our responsibility to develop radical empathy, to actually table our own needs and internalize the experiences and wishes of others so that we really become a channel for their desires. So a weekend competition clearly isn't remotely enough time to answer such complex questions, but a question never asked is a question never answered. And so we asked the question. And the students responded with their own questions written in the language of architecture. So I want to congratulate all of them who wrestled with this question. And I want to especially congratulate those who are being recognized this afternoon. And those who aren't should realize that any given day, it could have been different. Everyone proposed a serious and thoughtful proposal for this. And I also want to thank the jury for taking time to do this. And of course, thank the AIA Virginia for handling it. And I am looking forward to this discussion. And with that, it is my honor to turn the program over to Audrey Davis. Audrey.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. I am so pleased to be here today, and it was wonderful to be a part of the jury for this challenge. And it really was inspiring to me to see all of the entries, and I've been working with the City of Alexandria for over 28 years now, and so it was really interesting for me to be able to see a new vision for the Market Square area and the area in front of City Hall. And this is such an important place to us in the city. It's the hub of activity, but it is even more important for us now as it is one of the sites that we are looking at for the installation of our pillar that we will receive from the Equal Justice Initiative. Ria is so kindly going to be sharing my slides during my brief presentation. And Ria, if I could have the first slide, please. I think I'm probably preaching to the choir with this slide and the subsequent one, but I think most everyone knows the amazing work of Bryan Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama. We have been following Mr. Stevenson's work for many years, and it's interesting that, you know, as he is promoting the Equal Justice Initiative and the great work that they're doing, we in the city were beginning our work and our journey with social justice and looking at what we can do to make Alexandria a more welcoming community to all of its residents and to be honest and fully transparent in our history of racial terror, hate crimes. May I have the second slide, please? Of course, everyone knows the National Memorial for Peace and Justice and also the Legacy Museum from Enslavement to Mass Incarceration that come from the Equal Justice Initiative and the vision of Bryan Stevenson. And the incredible memorial that I do hope to visit one day. I was scheduled to visit before the pandemic hit, but I do hope I will make it there soon to see the really powerful memorial that looks at and honors those victims of racial terror hate crimes, mainly lynching. We do have a pillar waiting for us at the National Memorial for Peace and Justice for our two lynching victims, Joseph McCoy and Benjamin Thomas. May I have the next slide, please? This is our pillar, our Alexandria pillar. Joseph McCoy was lynched in Alexandria on April 23rd, 1897, and Benjamin Thomas was lynched in Alexandria on August 8th, 1899. We are coming next week, next Friday, will be the 124th anniversary of the lynching of Joseph McCoy, a tragic part of Alexandria's history, and one that we are really striving to make sure that our residents never forget. We want to make sure that they understand not only that two lynchings occurred here in Alexandria, but we are making a great effort within the city to make sure that African American history is part and woven in thoroughly through the historical narrative of the city of Alexandria. Many of you may know that we acquired at the height of the pandemic last year in March the Freedom House Museum located at 1315 Duke Street, which is the site, really the hub, one of the hubs of the domestic slave trade in the United States, and the site, a business site for 5 different dealers in slaves from 1828 through 1861 with the Union occupation of the city of Alexandria. So we are aware that with not only our lynchings, but also our role in the trafficking of men, women, and children as part of the domestic slave trade, Alexandria has a great deal of work to do to acknowledge not only its past crimes, but also to make sure that people never forget them and that people understand that the contributions that African Americans have made to our city continue to make to our city, and to make sure that everyone is well versed in this. And we are very proud that also at the height of the pandemic, the city hired its first racial equity officer, Jacqueline Tucker, who is now overseeing a huge plan with equity and inclusion for all city staff, for all of our residents. And so we are really hoping that we will one day achieve our ultimate goal of really fully acknowledging all of the contributions of communities of color in the city of Alexandria. May I have the next slide, please? The Alexandria Community Remembrance Project, which formally launched in September of 2019, is a citywide initiative dedicated to helping Alexandria understand its history of racial terror, hate crimes, and to work towards creating a welcoming community bound by equity and inclusion. The ACRP is made up of 7 committees, as you can see here. These 7 committees are open to members of the public, and if you are interested in working with us on our journey as we move forward with discovering more about our history of racial terror, hate crimes, expanding on our history of African American history in the community, we do welcome you to join us, and please check out our website where you will find more information. We have a new newsletter that you can sign up for, and you'll find updates about the upcoming commemoration for Joseph McCoy on April 23rd. May I have the next slide? Joseph McCoy, who we will honor on April 23rd, was lynched on April 23rd, 1897. He was accused of assaulting his employer's daughter. He was never given a trial, never had a chance to state his innocence. He was, of course, arrested without warrant. He was hanged from a lamppost and shot multiple times here in Alexandria. No one from the mob was arrested. Several African-American men, and in both of our lynchings, we know that the African-American community did come out in force to try to protect Joseph McCoy and Benjamin Thomas, but only they were arrested. No one else was ever charged in McCoy's death. For his commemoration, we will be illuminating City Hall for 3 nights in purple in honor of his memory. We will be unveiling a new sign that at the lynching site at the corner of North Lee and Cameron Streets on April 23rd, and this sign gives the history and all of the relevant sites related to the lynching of Joseph McCoy. May I have the next slide, please? Benjamin Thomas, our second lynching victim, who was lynched on August 8, 1899, was reported to be around 16 years old. Again, accused of attempting to sexually assault a young white girl who lived nearby. Again, arrested. We know that, again, the African-American community came out in force. We have the names of all 15 African-American men who came out to try and protect him. They were jailed. Actions were taken against them. Some of them were beaten. But again, no one who was part of the mob who lynched Benjamin Thomas was ever charged. Again, he was hanged multiple times. Again, he was shot. It is truly, truly a tragic story that we have both of these lynchings in the city of Alexandria. It is a shameful part of our past, but we are committed to making sure our community is aware of this. And may I have the next slide, please? You will see banners that will go up, like the ones you see here on the screen, in memory of Joseph McCoy. These are based, of course, on the very famous banners that were created by the NAACP that were used in the 1930s. We will also have a banner on the Alexandria Black History Museum. There will be floral displays near the area of the lynching in honor and in memory of Joseph McCoy. And we will, again, we encourage people to come to our website to read the full history and full reports about the deaths of both Joseph McCoy and Benjamin Thomas. And may I have the final slide, please? And now we would like to ask everyone to please participate in a moment of silence in memory of Joseph McCoy, lynched in Alexandria on April 23, 1897, and to also remember Benjamin Thomas, lynched in Alexandria on August 8, 1899. Thank you, and I'll now turn the podium over to Brad Grant.
We as a jury really pondered the question that was introduced in Susan's statement about the writing and authoring the project, how controversial and how powerful and how disturbing this project and this theme was, and was it appropriate for this theme to be included or part of this competition, which is a question that I think deserved some conversations, and we did indeed have that conversation. And I believe we, came to the conclusion that at least we deny who and where we are in history, in our American history. How could we not attempt as educators to deal with issues of racial and social history of injustice, and particularly in this case. So we were glad that, and in many ways impressed that the Virginia Prize committee chose this topic to pursue with this competition at this particular time. And I just want to quote Susan, and I believe Marcia Fearston, in the writing that they did for Inform magazine. We think this project is important as part of this quote, reflect on how our chosen discipline, the discipline of design, can help and shape a more just and equitable world. So we're very excited and impressed that this project did attempt to answer the questions that were posed by this competition.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate that, and thank you, Audrey, too. Really kind of a sobering overview, but just the same, the sort of the beauty of this is in the work that we saw, how thoughtful, honorable, intentional, and what an education it could be for all of us. So next, we're going to look at the projects that have been recognized. First, we'll present the AIA Virginia Prize winner. Then we'll present the best of school for each of the schools, followed by honorable mentions from each school. And there were, I think, 32 entries this year, so quite a bit of energy put into this. So for the 2021 Virginia Prize winner, Ryan Burnett from Virginia Tech, we want to share a few jury comments regarding each of these entries. And with, this was untitled. Some of them are titled and some were not, but as we were looking at this, recognize that contextual moments that are part of the events of our social fabric should also reference and be part of the physical fabric. Yet while at the same time, they need to stand out, they need to be noticed, they need to draw attention. That's necessary to bring awareness and hopefully engage people so that they'll take a closer look and hopefully come to a better understanding. And so we dubbed this subtle gestures, because in no way does it in any way shock or attack that kind of attention. However, if you were on this site, you might approach this and say, notice these paths that head into the center of this pool where there is something, and you think, what's at the apex of these paths? You know, why you'd be inclined to go. So you begin to wonder, where do these paths go to? And then you might turn around and say, where do they lead to? Where do they come from? To be at the pillar and then to walk and follow each path and stand in the place where the lynchings took place, which is part of the concept of this. And then to look back at the pillar would be an incredibly powerful experience. And I invite any other jurors to make any other comments. And above and beyond, this is just a really, truly beautiful presentation. This is the part that we didn't script with moving to others. So for the rest of the entries, maybe we can do that. But what we can do now is, hopefully Ryan Burnett is on the call. And Ryan, if you would just like to share with us for a minute or two some of your thinking, maybe enlighten us.
Sure. First of all, thank you to everybody. And
congratulations.
Thank you. I want to preface this by saying that while I took this prompt very seriously and engaged with it as best as I could, I still recognize that these weren't the ideal conditions in which a memorial like this would be created. Obviously, the goal behind the EJS project is that communities will come together to acknowledge and take responsibility for these horrific events as a collective. And this memory isn't an easy thing to come to terms with. The very act of creating this project serves to memorialize injustice and loss, as seen in past atrocities and as we still witness today. This kind of thing takes time, more than just one weekend, and it takes everyone, more than just a group of students, to be truly realized. And only through a holistic and collaborative process can this memorial truly serve and manifest itself as a product of the community's efforts to take responsibility for their past and present injustices. In the beginning, I grappled with questions as to whether or not I should even attempt to design a response to this proposal, but I eventually came to the conclusion that opting not to participate couldn't possibly solve anything. It would only end up being harmful or contributing to complacency. It's everyone's responsibility to take part and engage in this conversation. Regardless of who you are or where you're from, you can still do something. And that's where I started. And from the very beginning, I knew this installation would need to reference the lynching sites within the city. You know, Benjamin Thomas and Joseph McCoy weren't murdered in this large public plaza. They were killed on the streets, as many others still are today. And as such, this memorial needed to reach out of the square and into the city to physically touch these places and connect them to the main installation, the column, with these paths. And if you want to experience this memorial, you have to walk the path. It isn't just an object in the square. You have to physically align yourself and connect to the locations where these lynchings took place. You have to walk the path and you have to know what you're walking towards. And while I wanted these gestures to be powerful, I also wanted them to be subtle. So rather than causing extensive physical change to the square, I wanted to preserve it while representing and redefining it within this context. So in this way, the memorial doesn't impede any of the existing functions of the square or the surrounding streets. Ida B. Wells tells us that the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. And in that same spirit, anyone can continue to use this space, but they have to do so now, knowing that these lynchings happened here. And I want to close by thanking everyone involved in writing this prompt and organizing this event, as well as I want to thank the Equal Justice Initiative for all of the incredible work they do. It's so important for all of us to always be thinking critically about what we do and why we do it. And this prompt gave all of us a unique opportunity to come together to do just that. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to participate in this conversation, and I am truly honored that my work was selected to receive such a recognition. Thanks again to everyone in this process. And of course, the prompt doesn't end here.
Well, thank you, Ryan. And congratulations again. Next, we'll recognize the best of school from each school. And the first will be Ashley Montgomery is going to talk to us a little bit about the Hampton University Best of School. Ashley?
Thanks, Ron. So for Best of School for Hampton University was Jarrett Thomas's entry, The Onlookers, a memorial park and sculpture garden. Immediately upon seeing this, my idea and my thought was, it was just really poetic, taking this pillar and kind of laying it to rest on the site and on this design project that Jarrett has put together. We felt that it was very thoughtful and powerful, and we really appreciated kind of a different perspective and a viewpoint on this, involving the onlookers and those that were around, and recognizing and honoring those who tried to step in and intervene. It was a really thoughtful and passionful moment to bring to this design. Another aspect of this design that we really cared about was the use of the soil from the memorial in Alabama, and bringing that and tying that into the design. The pillar actually lays on the soil, and there's a moment where I guess Jarrett did a sun study. And so at a specific time during the day, it's kind of forcing you to kind of have a moment of remembrance and peace, and laying to rest the souls that were lost there. So we really appreciated your entry, Jarrett. It was very thoughtful, and just very poetic. And I will open it for the rest of the jurors to share some thoughts and insights that they had for the project.
I would just add that one of the things that we also really enjoyed about this project was its connection to some contemporary, like Black artists and their current work, such as Kara Walker, and these oversized of these figures, these dominating figures that are sort of observing and watching. And we felt that that resonated to like modern lynching, and so many of these horrific acts being recorded, and the idea of the onlookers, we felt was very powerful to bring these historical events and recontextualize them in a way that also feels relevant to today.
Okay, next, Chris Lee.
Rob, I think we were going to ask Jarrett to say a few words.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, you're right. I jumped ahead. Jarrett, please go.
Okay, sure, thanks. Yeah, I'm just very honored to be a part of this, and I thank you guys for your kind words about this project. And really, I think my biggest inspiration, I think, to coming up with this was on like the first day when we all got the project, and I was kind of looking at the program and some of the stories about these lynchings that happened here. There was a picture that I can't remember anymore if it was related to these lynchings or if it was a separate lynching. I think it was a separate lynching. But it was really crazy because it was like this man that was being lynched, and it was just a sea of people. It was like hundreds of people just circling like the pole that he was being lynched on. And I thought that was really crazy how it's like, you know, there's all these people here watching you go through such a torturous event. And that's just like a really I don't know, it's very powerful, I guess, in a negative way, but it's something that evokes an emotion, and I think needed attention to be drawn towards. So I started thinking about just how small, you know, Ben and I'm sorry, my mind is like is all over the place right now. Ben Thomas and Joseph McCoy, how small they must have felt being in that situation with all of those people around, and just no one trying to help them or stop this from happening. And so that's kind of where the different sizes of the people were brought into play, just to kind of evoke that same kind of feeling, and just to allow people to really stop and think about the humanity that was behind all of this, and really reflect on that. So again, I thank you guys for including me in my project in this, and can't wait to see what's next.
Well, thank you, Jarrett. It's always good to hear people talk about why they're doing what they're doing, and for you to describe that and then look at the image in the lower left and imagine that people, both those that want to help as well as those that were just onlookers, curious, and just the way the human nature is, it adds a whole new level of understanding to your entry. So thank you for that. Okay, now I think that we're ready to move on to Chris Lee, who will present both the UVA Best of School, and then I think Chris will be next for the Alexandria Center Best of School. So Chris, go ahead.
Thank you. The title of this project is called Context, and it was designed by Adam Johnson. Unfortunately, Adam had his vaccine shot yesterday and is completely under the weather. But what was really intriguing about this project is he set the steel monument from the Equal Justice Initiation in a sea of black slabs. The monument itself is actually taller than the black slabs. There are 800 slabs depicting 800 counties where racial violence has taken place. So during and these black slabs are arranged in a grid. As you can see in the upper left-hand corner, the steel monument is visible because of its height and easily to point out. One of the cool things that Adam did was actually have a nighttime shot where the black slabs were illuminated on the top surface. All of them were illuminated, but the area around the monument was not. So that nighttime shot is very compelling because it looks like there's just a space amongst all these lit stone piers, or so there's a void there, which sort of, to me, felt like the void that one experiences when there is an act of violence in America. I think I would like to open it up to my jury members for any other views regarding this winning submission. Well, there was a quote from the jury as a whole, and it said, "The order, simplicity, and clarity are both sobering and powerful. The contrast of trees aligned along the landscaped edges soften and invites visitors to a field of tomb-like monuments, referring to the astounding number of places where lynchings have occurred, all deferring to the single stroke of color rising above. So next, I would like to go to the best of school.
Say, Chris,
yes.
If I could just offer one other thought.
Sure.
One of the things that I thought was really powerful about this is that it so easily represents 800. When one of my daughters was young, at one point she asked me what 1,000 was. And for a little kid, I thought about it a bit. I finally said, it's a lot. It's really a lot. And when you look at this, if you were in this place and you saw 800 of these tomb-like stones, it would really, I think, strike a chord with just the sheer number of these incidences and how significant that number is. It's a lot. So thanks.
Sure. Thank you. The next winner is from the best of school is from the Washington Alexandria Architecture Center, the WAC. That's a cool name. I was really taken back. I really enjoyed the presentation itself. It's very well crafted. It almost looks like a hand drawing. It's quite handsome. And in a way, you have to look deep into this solution because it's sort of similar to the Virginia Prize in that if you look at the grid in which the monument sets in, two of the corners, there's supposed to be 80 positions for these poles that surround the pond, but there are only 78 poles in place. At two corners, poles are missing. And that sort of also indicates the direction which one can take in order to get to the locations where the two gentlemen were lynched. I found it fascinating that the solution is dynamic by virtue of the fact that whatever time of day you are on site, the appearance will change because of the sun's path and the shadows that are projected by the poles. I also thought that the selection of the poles and the coating on the top 2/3 of creosote were very intriguing, and the fact that the designer felt that water from the poles actually could travel down the poles and then travel into the pond where the actual monument is. I have to admit it, this was my favorite solution, but I think it's just quite well done and quite poetic. I'd like to throw it out to my jury members for comments.
Chris, this is Audrey, and I really was interested in this entry. I was interested in all of the entries, and they've all made me look at Market Square in such a different way, and the use of the idea of using shadow, the idea of the wooden poles, I found was really an interesting take on our square and how we could represent the lynchings. I think the work that Ryan, that Jarrett, that Adam and Ellie have done, they're all elements in each one of these proposals that we have, once we knew the winners, that I shared with a couple of members of our steering committee, and all have some very interesting aspects, all of the winners that we really seriously want to take into account when we think about placing the memorial, and we'll certainly be sharing with our city manager in Alexandria. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you. And now I would like Ellie to speak on her splendid solution.
Yeah, thank you so much. So first, I would like to say that I want to recognize that the gravity of this subject could not be dealt justice over such a short weekend, and also that this type of project would need community input. So my solution, as you pretty much described, that there's a grid of columns and each column represents a lynching in Virginia's history, and the two missing columns from those corners are symbolic of the lynchings of Joseph McCoy and Benjamin Thomas, and they are directional to where those lynchings occurred. I guess lastly, I would like to say that as architects, we need to work to build equitable spaces which facilitate care and community rather than policing and punishment. Yeah, wow. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellie. Appreciate those comments. Sequoia, do you want to talk about the Virginia Tech Honorable Mention?
Yes, so this is another submission that was untitled by Mateus Montenegro Sandoval. And I'll first sort of address the comments as a jury as a whole that we had for this, that it was really reminiscent of the data visualizations by W.E.B. Du Bois in his Visualizing Black America. And that the rammed earth pillars are a brilliant way to represent the centuries of slavery and terror. And like the rings in a tree, they dutifully measure or depict the years and the conditions. But more importantly, these layers bluntly indicate the length of time that our society allowed for the atrocities to endure. There's always sort of talk in the realm of architecture about the power of a napkin sketch. And this may have been sort of crude in its presentation, but it was very powerful in terms of its layout. It had a quality similar to an analytique. It also really had a wonderful use of the soil collection in creating these layers that depicted the years of slavery and the years of terror surrounding the end of slavery and Jim Crow. It would also had a powerful section where there was a place for repose, and that was considered a place for continuing unfinished conversation. So we wanted to recognize Mateus in his work for this submission. Mateus unfortunately could not be here today. So I want to just give his inspiration. Mateus says that while analyzing the prompt, I was able to pull out the temporal aspects and sketch through how I could represent the spatial and the temporal within the site. Ultimately, it was through materiality that builds up over time, like a trauma, and more practically, one that is easy to maintain and able to resist the forces of nature. And I'd just like to open this to then any of my fellow jurors to make any comments on this particular submission.
I was definitely really intrigued by the soil collection aspect of it and looking at the layers, because this is something we are actually getting ready to do very, very shortly, and it provided a lot of inspiration. So I think while the design presentation was very simple, there were incredibly powerful elements within it and very well thought out elements, and I appreciated the submission.
Yeah, I really appreciated the submission. During our conversations, we talked a lot about impact, right? What is the impact of the design on the user and how they would engage? And I think this proposal just eloquently kind of gives space for the user to fully engage and to fully educate themselves and to just sit in the moment. And as Sequoia mentioned before, there was a place of contemplation at the end. It's just a really beautiful way, I thought, to have people come to a site and think and engage in a very meaningful way.
Okay, I think that I am have the honor of talking about this honorable mention from the WAC by Audrey Bolista, and it's entitled "The Alexandria Community Plaza for Racial Justice." It's so simple and understated. I think it's elegant. This pathway that's created that I think would engage visitors, especially children. They love to follow a path. It's almost like a game board or something, but there are places to explore and see where they end up and what the message is or what the takeaway is from each of those things. And that kind of engagement with people is so critical in terms of communicating the message. Also like that the paths wind around and they define places to honor, another place to learn and participate, and another to reflect and consider hopeful solutions. So there are a variety of places here for a variety of kind of activities and almost a sequence of events where first we honor, then we learn and participate, and then we reflect and consider. So really a strong but understated solution. Anyone else care to comment on this before we ask Audrey?
Speaking as another Audrey, I think that it definitely, to me, Audrey's presentation and Ryan's presentation of the Market Square area, to me, really, while they were very simple in design, were very powerful in design in the way that they were able to make this plaza that is really a living plaza when you think of the activities that go on here, our farmers market, our remembrances for 9/11, for the Holocaust. This is just a space that is certainly our hub of our community, and I think Audrey's design incorporates a space where people can move through it and have a place for reflection and contemplation. And I thought that using the existing space in the way she did was really very powerful. So I was very pleased to see it, and congratulations.
And Audrey, if I can add that something that Ellie said earlier, just about the nature of competitions, that in this case, that she feels that it would be important to work with and get the input of the community. So a number of these we looked at, because in a competition, you don't have that advantage that really makes a project better, and that's to get the input of those that either know more or understand more or will be using the space. And so a number of these we just thought had so much upside, so much potential, because with that kind of input, how they could be developed and just layers of richness added, especially to one as subtle as this. So Audrey, would you, if you're on the line, hopefully you are, would you like to tell us a little bit about your thinking?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for talking about it, and you guys had very good insights into all the projects and to just the meaning of this prompt and everything. I guess I was thinking a lot about not just the celebrating and honoring the victims of the past, but also thinking about victims of the present injustices against Black and brown people in this country, and thinking about it more as not just a thing to look at in the past, but how can we be active in the present so that this doesn't happen in the future. And I wanted to center the Black experiences, so honoring the victims of the past, and then learning and participating in current situations and protesting the current injustices. And then also creating spaces where we can be hopeful that the future is going to be more just and more equitable, and just ultimately centering on these Black experiences in Alexandria and also just in the United States in general.
Well, thank you, Audrey, and congratulations. So Brad, will you talk to us about the UVA honorable mention?
Absolutely. This is another I think good project that what I found powerful and interesting was this idea of the three pillars and how the formal composition of these pillars into threes, the formality really spoke to this idea and represented the history of the three pillars of what the author calls oppression, injustice, and inequality. And placing these three pillars in a formal composition around the center of the plaza, allowing the activities to take place around there. I thought was an interesting way to organize the site. And the scale, I love the scale and these kind of monumental pillars, cantilevering from the earth, and kind of representing this idea, again, in a formal way, of these injustices. This lynching happens, you know, above the ground, not under the ground or not below the ground. I found this to have that power and the darkness of it, the richness and darkness. And as you read, and if you could read closer, the use of the materials, the stone materials, and the author, Pete, uses also wood. And there was a couple of projects that invoked wood or used wood as a way of allowing deterioration or aging or history happening there as the wood aged over time. That allows for, you know, a more kind of elongated degree of introspection. So I thought this really merited an honorable mention. Others on the jury want to comment, or if not, is Pete available to comment?
Well, if I could just add, and others may want to jump in here, that one of the things that I really liked about this is a number of the schemes almost abandoned the program of the market square as a market square. And this one, in that middle image on the board, you see all the umbrella tents and the vendors and everything else and all of these people. And you can just imagine this bustling marketplace that you come to. And then you'd see these monumental monolithic slabs and you think, what's that all about? And that's the exact kind of thing, I think, that would intrigue people. And at night, I can imagine this being lit and just powerful, powerful draw into the center. And so I thought that this would be highly successful in that it would cause people to be curious. It would draw them in. And in any kind of monument like this, it's so important to get people in, to engage them, to get them to look, and then hopefully they read or they see and they understand better and they're enlightened. So I thought it was really powerful in those ways.
Is Pete available to comment?
Yes. Hello. Thank you so much for the comments. They're absolutely spot on to what I was thinking behind the scenes. And what I wanted to demonstrate clearly was to have the three pillars as a memorial of orchestration that stands out dominantly in the market square, of course. And creating this juxtaposition of interplay and drawing people in the center and seeing all the names on the slabs and just realizing the current situation of reflecting upon the oppression, the injustice, and the inequality on our society. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you, Pete. And Ashley I think this is the final honorable mention.
Yeah. So our final honorable mention comes from Hampton University. This is the work of Andre Jackson, titled Illuminating the Shadows of a Dark Past. I think while talking through this, a lot of the jurors, we really appreciate the use of light. It was really interesting. We did get a lot of submissions that played with your senses in different ways. And so we really appreciated the idea of engaging in these monuments and activating all of our senses. What's really poignant about it, I think, is how he's honoring the lives lost in this design proposal he's put together. So the light shines from the bottom and kind of shoots through these hexagonal crystals that he's designed, kind of like sending the soul off, right, and giving them peace. So we really thought that was really powerful about this project and where it's centered next to the fountain on the site for context. So it allows you to kind of sit there and pay your remembrances. And so we really just appreciated that thoughtfulness coming from Andre. I will share this with the rest of the jurors to have their comments as well.
I think for us, this was probably, as you were saying, Ashley, one of the most interesting uses of light. And we did have other submissions that used light. And I think imagining this in the Market Square area and seeing how the light would play with the crystals and the idea with light and the representation of the soul, I thought was very, very interesting and very, very compelling and very thoughtful.
One thing that I was interested in would be if there was a shot where it was foggy or misty, and how that would impact the its presentation. But my concern is that the project was very reliant upon nighttime shots, and I would wonder how this would present if it was a daytime shot. I love the concept of the uplight through the crystals, and I think it's very intriguing. But do you appreciate it as well during 12 o'clock noon? That would be a concern of mine.
Right, and that was actually a topic of conversation with a number of entries, that whether they were dependent upon day or night, and how whether or not they would read at those times that might not be considered ideal, which is a challenging thing, especially if you're using something as light, which is best read, against the dark. So that was a topic of conversation with a number of these as well. Ashley, you're suddenly big on the screen.
Well, did we have the author of the last project to speak to it?
I don't think Andre's on. I don't see his name.
Andre was not able to join us today. So that concludes the recognized projects. And so we've allotted some time for Q&A from the audience.
Could I say one thing though? What I'm impressed. I taught at Virginia Tech in 83, 84, and they were into their Swiss Italian modernist movement. They resisted the postmodernist efforts that were sweeping the world, if you will. But you could tell Virginia Tech's work from, let's say, UVA. And what I'm really impressed is I was worried that I was going to be able to tell what project was from what school, and I was unable to do so. I was impressed that there's no way, there was no tell, that these winning solutions. I mean, actually, all the solutions were well done, but again, there was no school signature on any of them, and that made me quite happy. And also, one thing about Harvard and the 7 students that Rob said came from Virginia Tech. No, there were 7 students from the state of Virginia that got admitted into the School of Design. So Harvard seems to have a pipeline to the state of Virginia. And I would encourage all of you students, if you are so inclined to want to go to 2 more years of architectural education, to please consider applying to the School of Design in the future.
Well, thanks for clarifying that, Chris. You know, and I will just so that everybody understands how we went through this process. We did not know where any of the entries came from until the end. So there was sort of no school bias, so to speak, and it was surprising, but it was also pretty exciting to see just the level of talent across all of the schools. And I don't know if all of you students are talking to one another, but you seem to be communicating, because at a very high level too. It was great to see such thoughtful work, and then to hear some of you talk about that work. I wish we had time for everyone to talk about their entry, because I think it would just enlighten us more and probably impress us all the more, because I'm impressed by the sensitivities, the thoughtfulness, the kind of concern about the message that you're sending and trying to craft that in a way. And that's what we do is all about. We are accommodating program and making sure people can exit the building and all that type of thing. But we're also communicating and crafting a message, making a statement, expressing emotions or purpose or attitude in what we do. And so while a competition is not a perfect, by any means, a perfect vehicle, what's nice about a competition is you kind of get these raw ideas. And I think we're so impressed with the raw ideas that we saw. So I don't want to monopolize this, please, others. We have time for questions from students or anybody on the call. Other practitioners, please jump in.
I just want to take a moment to also recognize some of these submissions who did not make it to sort of the winning submission or honorable mention, but sort of took the prompt and were able to sort of weave more contemporary narratives. I think that there was a lot of merit to the submissions that looked at the contemporary violence against unarmed Black folk and the LGBTQ community. And so I think that those submissions, while they sort of did not sort of get to sort of honorable mention, I want to make note that those were very powerful and impactful designs.
Yeah, and actually to add to what McCoy is saying is that we have a bunch of pretty independent thinkers in this group. And the first pass at our evaluation, we had so many that each of us wanted to promote. And it was like, well, can't we award these 3 and this 5? And we just saw so much merit in so many of these. So congratulations to all of you, really great effort. And to the schools, to the people teaching and guiding this whole process. Really effective. Makes me wish I was in school now, sort of.
You know, another thing is I was happy to see a couple of hand-drawn submissions.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would be that brave if I was a student right now. I think I would maybe be really relying on the computer graphics, but it was heartening to see, particularly the Virginia Tech solution with the stratification of soil. It was a excellent submission, and the student believed enough in themselves to submit it as a hand-drawn submission, and it was quite well done. I'm glad to see some of you guys still do that.
Yeah, well put, Chris, because we were really intrigued by the ideas and just kind of the graphic quality, or as they say at Virginia Tech, the materiality that was expressed was really powerful.
So there are no students have any questions? I'm so surprised.
I would like to say I'm not a student. I don't have questions, but you know, I think this was a powerful brief and a powerful project. But I have to say I'm unfortunate. It is unfortunate that it was a competition of all the nature of the projects to have a competition. And I say that in light in Washington, D.C., we have a similar type of student inter-campus gathering. We no longer call it a competition. It's a collaboration. And of all the projects of recent times, this was really a project of collaboration. I think several of the students alluded to working with the community and working with each other and collaboration. And it's just unfortunate that we have to have quote unquote a competition. And I think we all realize that, Rob, when we were saying, well, you know, let's have this one and this one and this one. You know, there shouldn't necessarily have to be only one, you know, one that is elevated. And so I think I just wanted to note that.
Yes, so maybe one last call for any bold students that would, or other practitioners that would care to say anything. We'll give you a couple of seconds here. Well, as just to offer a few closing remarks. First of all, thank you, AIA Virginia. This is really a worthwhile effort. And Rhea especially. I don't see her up right now, but behind the scenes and really working to make all of this happen. But thank you, AIA Virginia, for sponsoring and coordinating this competition, or the committee that does this. And thanks to each of you jurors. For those that I didn't know before we entered this sort of journey together, it's really been a pleasure getting to know you, and I thank you for your thoughtfulness and for your time and your commitment to this. It was really a lot of fun. And to the students, thank you for your courage really to enter this kind of a competition. It's a little daunting, especially in our current social situation. I don't know how to put that, but in the current environment, this is really a kind of a telling sort of thing to even express ourselves about. But thank you for your energy and your courage, and congratulations to all of you. Really impressed by the work. This was such a timely subject this year. It's, you know, when I think back that this was planned over a year ago, I'm sure that it's just hard to believe how timely it could be and how important it was. So I feel really fortunate in that regard. But I'd also like to, you know, just thinking about this year of COVID and social distancing and our separation from one another, and I'm wondering how this kind of event, and this alludes to what I think Brad was getting at, I'm wondering how this type of effort could be reconsidered as a more collaborative kind of effort with a common sense of purpose, or, you know, production of an outcome in collaboration, you know, across the schools or within each school or within our communities. And there could still be recognition for parts really done well or really effectively or whatever it might be, but to think of having an outcome where we create something of value for the community. So I'm not sure where the committee for next year is going, but I think that's you know, just something to think about. And if you need more detail on that, just give Brad a call. So with that, thank you, everyone. Rhea, I don't know if we have any other closing comments or anything that's necessary to qualify this as with AIA credits, but thank you again for everyone for calling in, for participating. Great, you know, I hope that in Alexandria, when they get their monument, that something wonderful is done with it. And we've sure got a wealth of ideas to start with here, so.
And you're all invited when we do dedicate it.
Great, I love Old Town, we'll come.
Thank you, Audrey.
Yes, thank you.
And I'd like to just take a moment to express our gratitude to the jurors. They gave us, they're so generous with their time and so thoughtful in their deliberations and their willingness to participate in this follow-up discussion. Something new that came out of some conversations with their university partners. So thank you all so much. And thank you to everyone for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Well, thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now.